Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Helmet to Helmet. My name is Mason.
And this is Ian.
And this is going to be our draft coverage. The draft is launching today. We're going to be airing this on Thursday. It's only going to be in a few hours. We're getting really excited.
Ooh.
What we're going to be doing is I've created a one-round mock draft that you'll be able to find in the comment section below or the descriptions. I'll leave a link to it. So we're looking at it right now. Ian, do you want to go ahead and start off the comments with some of these picks?
Before we get into the picks, I was going to say make sure that this is a no-trade draft, so we're not predicting any crazy trades. But some of the picks that I found interesting that you've made is possibly that the Broncos are passing over a quarterback in this quarterback-heavy class, we suppose, and DeAndre Baker being all the way down at 32nd. You're a Georgia fan, too.
I agree. Let's start with the Broncos. And I have them grabbing DK Metcalf out of Ole Miss, which everyone agrees is probably the best wide receiver in this class. He's expected to go top 15. A lot of people have Denver taking a quarterback, especially since John Elway has said he is smitten with Drew Lock. I don't think this is the year for them to grab one, especially with all the good quarterbacks that are coming out in the next 2 years, and the fact that you just traded for Joe Flacco. So I've got them grabbing a receiver to help boost up their offense because they just lost Demaryius Thomas, who's now with the Patriots.
Who was with the Texans for like 5 weeks or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. And they don't have Emmanuel Sanders anymore either. So their number one receiver is Cortland Sutton, which was a first rounder a couple years ago or a second rounder, something like that.
But he's not an outside receiver.
He's not a dominant guy.
He's not that guy.
Yeah. No. So I have them taking Metcalf to lead their wide receiver charge because they have a decent roster. Phillip Lindsay, Joe Flacco, they can make some noise, especially with that defense.
I do find it interesting that you said that Drew Lock is who Elway has his eyes on, and you have him being picked right after that, almost as like a little stab in the back, saying like, you had a chance if you wanted him.
I do. I have the Bengals taking Drew Lock, the quarterback out of Missouri, right there at 11. I think it's time for them to admit Andy Dalton isn't their quarterback of the future. They're not going to draft one if one doesn't fall to them. But I think Drew Lock is good enough at 11 that they're going to go ahead and take their future Andy Dalton replacement. And they're going to give Drew Lock the same treatment as Patrick Mahomes got in Kansas City.
A good old training year.
Where they'd say to Alex Smith, look, this guy's the quarterback of the future, so if you don't win the Super Bowl this year, I'm sorry, you're gone. That's the only way you can stay around if you're Andy Dalton. You have to win the Super Bowl. And the Bengals have a talented roster. They should be winning more games than they are. They have A.J. Green, they have Joe Mixon, they have Geno Atkins, they have Vontaze Burfict. Actually, sorry, he just got cut, didn't he?
He's with the Raiders now,
yeah,
but they had
Vontaze Burfict. This is a talented roster that definitely should be winning more games than the Bengals are winning. And I think a big part of their problem is Andy Dalton.
Yes, I completely agree with that. Andy Dalton is that line, which here's the question is, are they going to change that line by saying, all right, we're going to cut you now? So then that moves the line up to what tier quarterback you want.
Well, see, the other thing they could do with Andy Dalton is now they could try to swing him for future draft picks in the same way that Kansas City did with Alex Smith.
So who would need an Andy Dalton, if you will?
The Dolphins could look at him because they're looking for a one-year guy. I know they signed Fitzpatrick.
They have Fitzmagic.
It could be them. Maybe if the Giants decide to pass on a quarterback, they could grab him, which I have the Giants actually taking Dwayne Haskins in this draft. There are a few teams that are in need of a quality backup or a journeyman guy, but he's quickly becoming a Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I can see. Yeah, he's not there, but he's there.
Going to DeAndre Baker, I actually had him going 29th to Kansas City, which is where a lot of experts had him going before the Frank Clark trade, which happened Tuesday. So now that the Seahawks have that 29th overall pick, obviously with their first rounder at 21, I have them taking Greedy Williams. I don't think they'll take two cornerbacks in the first round. So I think he drops a little bit there. The Packers won't take him. The Rams won't take him. So I have the Patriots grabbing him. And the thing is, the Patriots' only real need that I can see is tight end. And I have Noah Fant and I have TJ Hawkinson going earlier in the draft. They're the only first-round tight ends that have significant value there. The Patriots can grab an Irv Smith Jr. out of Alabama in one of the later rounds.
Yeah, tight end isn't a position that I think that the Patriots would go after first round, if anything.
I think if TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant is available, we've seen the Patriots' reliance on two tight end sets over the past decade. Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski.
Dwayne Allen recently.
Yeah. When they're dominant, they have two really good tight ends. And so the retirement of Gronk really needs them to get another tight end, but the value's not there.
Ooh, speaking of another retirement, Raiders,
Marshawn
Lynch retired.
Absolutely.
So I'm not sure if that will shake up what Gruden is thinking, which honestly, predicting Gruden is more difficult than predicting the lottery numbers.
Yeah. Honestly, predicting Gruden is incredibly hard. I just tried to give him in this draft the best player available in positions of need. I think it's definitely possible with one of his later first-round picks, he picks up Josh Jacobs out of Alabama. There are some questions about his game, such as the lack of touches he really had at Alabama. That could concern a lot of people. I don't know if it will concern Gruden and Mike Mayock. I still think he's a first-rounder. I think if anyone's going to pick him up at this point, it's going to be the Raiders. I don't know if you remember, in my original mock draft, I had them taking him 24th or so.
Yeah, it was the first trade that they had, with the Bears.
Yeah. So this is obviously someone that's been on their radar for a little while because they need help at running back. Probably the most notable thing about this draft is I don't have Kyler Murray going number 1.
Yes.
And if you've been around me at all these past couple of months, you know how annoying I've been saying Kyler Murray's
so
not
annoying.
going 1. All the reports saying the Cardinals are talking with them and things. This is ridiculous. Everyone knew this was a smokescreen to try to get the Raiders to trade up to number 1. The Cardinals aren't going to take Kyler Murray when they took Josh Rosen as a top 10 pick the very previous year. I have the Cardinals taking Nick Bosa instead. And we even see now the reports are coming out that they're not going to take Kyler. They're like, well, we're undecided on the number 1 overall pick. They're not taking Kyler. I have Kyler falling all the way to 4 to Oakland because if you look at those top 3 teams, the Cardinals have Josh Rosen, the 49ers have Jimmy Garoppolo, and the Jets have Sam Darnold, who actually turned it on at the end of last year.
Very great. Like, despite how bad the Jets are, he was a bright spot. I'm going to give him that.
Yeah. So I have him falling to 4 with the Raiders because I think the team has given up on Derek Carr, and it wouldn't surprise me if John Gruden got rid of him as well.
It's hard to give up on a quarterback when you trade away all his everything he had.
I agree. He seems mentally weak, though.
He is mentally weak because he's lost everything around him, every supporting cast. He's getting sacked so often. The question is that are they going to leave Carr in there for that whole year and let him be the punching bag while they teach Kyler?
No. And contrary to popular belief, the Raiders actually have a pretty decent offensive line.
It's just Carr sucks.
Yeah. Carr's been bad and he doesn't have weapons. I think this is one of the situations where they're going to draft Kyler at 4. He'll be in by week 5 or 6.
Will they trade away Carr?
He'll be a backup for a year and then either go as a free agent or if they can get a mid-round pick, like a 4th or a 5th rounder, they'll trade him away. One thing I'm sure a lot of people for this podcast are curious about is who I have the Falcons grabbing. I don't have them getting Ed Oliver. He jumped up to 8. His stock has gone from being the number 1 overall pick to falling somewhere in the mid-teens to now going back up to a top 10 pick. I have the Falcons taking another falling defender, Rashawn Gary, the defensive end out of Michigan. And if you guys remember my first mock draft, I had him going number 4 to the Raiders. This guy is incredibly talented. He's got the size. He's got the speed. He's got the athleticism. A report came out that he may have a tear in his shoulder. He can play this next season, but he may need surgery after that, and it's something that the teams are going to have to monitor and watch. I think for the Falcons, it's worth the risk here. The only offensive lineman you would take ahead of him would be Jonah Williams and Juwan Taylor. They're already gone. Yeah. And cornerback, I don't know if you've noticed the trends. Cornerback is being heavily devalued as we go down.
I really don't understand that. I guess because they realize that this league is shifting so much more offensively that it doesn't really matter how good your defense is.
It's been interesting.
It's been neglected, I feel.
We went from having Greedy Williams as a possible top 10 pick to now
falling almost out of the first round.
Yeah, Greedy Williams and DeAndre Baker both going to playoff teams, and Byron Murphy being the first cornerback off at 16 to the Panthers. And part of that's just they looked really bad at pro days, which shouldn't factor in too much, but will be a factor.
Yeah. And I'm going back to the Rashawn Gary. I actually like that pickup for the Falcons because we have that rotational line. So when we rotate them, didn't we just re-sign Claiborne? Mm-hmm. You have Claiborne, Vic Beasley.
We have Rashid Hageman back as well.
Back from whatever he did wrong.
Yeah.
And it's in this kind of defense, it would work if he has a shoulder injury because he's not going to be every down kind of guy. So that would be a good way to see his potential. But another thing that I noticed from this mock draft is the SEC is dominant in here.
Yeah, just some fun facts about it. So the school with the most players drafted in this mock draft is Clemson with 3, but the conference with the most picks is the SEC, who I have with 12 first-rounders. Starts off with Quinnen Williams at number 2 and ends all the way with DeAndre Baker at 32. The SEC players are dominant, and it's not like it's all just Alabama and Georgia. There's a couple of Mississippi State players in here. There's a couple of Ole Miss players in here, a couple of LSU players in here. It's very spread out. There's even a Kentucky guy, Josh Allen, going in the first round.
And it's not all defensive side of the ball either.
No, it's just an absolute mesh from everywhere, which I think shows the dominance of the conference, really. They're talented on both sides of the ball. Another fun fact, the most drafted position I have is defensive tackle at 6 of those, but 3 of them come in the last 5 picks. And a lot of those are just either they're the best player available and the team needs them, or it's actual need at defensive tackle. Like Dexter Lawrence to the Chargers is an interesting one because their run defense was a little shoddy last year. They have great pass rushers, obviously, in Joey Bosa and Melvin Ingram. But the defensive tackle, I think Brandon Meebane's in the middle there, who had a good season.
He's getting older.
Dexter Lawrence is a 6'4", 320-pound defensive tackle. That's how you stop the run. That would make the Chargers line one of the best, if not the best, in the NFL. Anything else you want to talk about with this?
No, I mean, I really like the look of it. It looks feasible, but we're all going to see what happens tomorrow or tonight, whenever this comes out. I forget. It's going to be interesting to see how you're going to be like, I was right, or wow, I was off.
Yeah, don't treat this like gold, obviously.
It is Mason's word.
Mock drafts are so hard to predict nowadays. People trade, and this is a no-trade mock draft.
Okay, here's a random question. How many trades do you expect tonight?
I could see quite a few. I still feel like the Cardinals could trade out of one. Because I don't think their goal was ever to pick with the first overall pick. Mm-hmm. Obviously, they have too many holes for that. I think the entire Kyler Murray thing was to bait the Raiders to trade and send either their 4th overall and then like the 24th or something, or trade a bunch of first-round picks so they can start rebuilding their roster. There could be a trade there. I've heard that the Falcons want to trade up. I've heard the Falcons want to trade down. I've heard the Lions want to trade down. We could see probably as many as 5 or 6 trades.
5 or 6 trades.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bold.
Well, if you remember, we had 4 last year.
We did have
5?
4. It was an unusual amount, I thought, last year. But this is a really interesting draft class because it's more defensive than I've seen in any of the recent years. But yet they're still talking about those quarterbacks like Kyler Murray and just Dwayne Haskins. And even my little Duke guy, Daniel Jones. He's hanging on. And I'm not sure if he's a fit in the Redskins, but it's interesting to see how quarterbacks are being overvalued, I feel, for how little they played or how little we actually have on them versus the cornerback position, which you said earlier is neglected.
Yeah, definitely. It is really a defensive-heavy draft, absolutely. But the quarterbacks obviously are going to be the most important piece in every draft. Those are your franchise guys that when you draft, those are the people you put on a pedestal. Whether it's Jameis Winston or Peyton Manning, they immediately become the face of your franchise. I mean, when you think Buccaneers, it's Jameis Winston now.
I think Josh Freeman.
See, it's still a quarterback. One more notable thing I wanted to talk about before we leave out. There's a new top safety. When we first did this mock draft, it was Deontay Thompson out of Alabama. He's been replaced by Nasir Adderley, the safety out of Delaware. And a lot of this is combine numbers. A lot of this is pro day numbers. But also just the range that Adderley has is impressive. I think he was overlooked because he went to Delaware instead of Alabama like Deontay Thompson. And this is what I like about this time is you really see a lot of these smaller guys start to shoot up. Like we weren't even talking about TJ Hawkinson or Noah Fant out of Iowa a couple months ago. You see a lot of smaller school guys, not even smaller schools, but like low-tier Power 5 schools.
Yeah, schools that you don't really expect, or when you hear, you're like, wait, they have a college football team? Teams that you forget about. And I actually think that those schools can sometimes be undervalued because the players, they didn't play the same competition, but I believe that their bodies are in a better condition from not necessarily playing the best every week. So it's a weird mixture of like that might be a pro if you look at it from the right perspective, but at the same time their bodies might not be used to it. But it's interesting.
You have to compare the talent levels of the conferences that they played in. Remember to tune in on Monday. We're going to be dropping a post-draft review. We'll be talking about some of our favorite picks, some of our least favorite picks, the teams that won, the teams that lost, and everything in between. Until then, my name is Mason.
And this is Ian.
And this is Helmet to Helmet.